It began in Salem, a town where history didn't just live in books, it lingered in the air. Daniel Carter had never believed in haunted houses. At 19, he believed in logic, deadlines, and rent that didn't destroy his bank account. So when he found a listing for a 2-story house on Maple Street at nearly half the usual price, he didn't question it. He should have. The house stood at the far end of the street, where the pavement narrowed and the streetlights grew sparse. It wasn't abandoned, not exactly, but it looked like something time had forgotten. The paint had peeled into long, curling strips. The porch leaned slightly to one side, as if tired of holding itself up. And the windows looked like they were watching. Daniel stepped out of the cab, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "People still live here?" the driver asked, glancing nervously at the house. "Yeah," Daniel replied casually. "Well, I will." The driver didn't respond. He just nodded quickly, took the fare, and drove away faster than necessary. Daniel stood there for a moment, alone. The silence was the first thing he noticed. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that feels wrong. No distant traffic, no barking dogs, no wind, just stillness. He walked up the porch steps. They creaked loudly under his weight, the sound echoing unnaturally in the quiet. The front door was already unlocked. That should have been the second warning. Inside, the air felt heavy, not dusty, not stale, heavy, like stepping into a room where something had just happened, something you weren't supposed to see. Daniel forced a small laugh. "Ugh, old houses," he muttered. He set his bag down and walked further in. The living room was empty except for a single armchair in the corner. Its fabric was faded, but what stood out was its position. It faced the wall, not the window, not the center of the room, just the wall. Daniel frowned. Weird choice. The floor creaked again as he moved toward the kitchen. Every step sounded louder than it should have, as if the house was listening. That's when he noticed the temperature. It was cold, too cold. And yet, when he checked his phone, the weather app said it was a mild October afternoon. "Maybe insulation sucks," he said, trying to sound normal, even though no one else was there. The kitchen was bare, except for a rusted sink and cabinets that hung slightly open. One of them slowly creaked shut as he watched. Daniel froze. "Okay," he whispered. He walked over and opened it again. Nothing inside. He closed it firmly. "Just air pressure," he said. But the house didn't feel like it had air moving through it. It felt sealed. Upstairs there were 3 rooms, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and 1 door at the end of the hallway. That last door was different. It was darker than the others. The wood looked older, almost burned at the edges. And unlike everything else in the house, it was locked. Daniel tried the handle. It didn't budge. "Storage, maybe," he shrugged. But as he turned away, he felt it. That unmistakable sensation, like someone was standing right behind him, breathing, watching. He turned around quickly. Nothing, just the locked door. But now, it didn't feel just like a door. It felt like something on the other side was aware of him. Daniel shook his head. "Get a grip." He went back downstairs and started unpacking. Hours passed, the sun set, darkness filled the house faster than expected, as if the light didn't want to stay. By 10 p.m., the silence had returned, deeper this time. He turned on the TV just for background noise, but the signal kept cutting out, replaced by brief bursts of static. At one point, he could swear he heard something in the static, a faint sound, like knocking. He turned the TV off. The silence came back instantly, and that's when he heard it clearly for the first time. Knock. Daniel looked toward the hallway. Knock. Knock. It wasn't coming from the door. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from somewhere deeper, inside the house. He stood up slowly. "Hello?" he called out. No response. Then again. Knock. 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 This time it came from the wall beside him. Daniel stepped back. His heart began to race. "Nope," he whispered. He grabbed his phone and checked the time. 3:07 a.m. The knocking stopped, just like that, as if it knew he was listening. Daniel didn't sleep that night, and somewhere, deep inside the walls of the house on Maple Street, something else didn't sleep either. The morning came, but it didn't feel like morning. In Salem, sunlight usually carried warmth, soft, golden, comforting. But inside the house on Maple Street, the light felt pale, weak, as if it had already given up before entering. Daniel hadn't slept, not even for a minute. He sat on the edge of the bed, eyes fixed on the wall where the knocking had come from. Nothing had happened since 3:07 a.m. No sound, no movement, and somehow that made it worse. By late morning, he tried to convince himself it was all in his head. Old house noises, stress, imagination. That's what people said, right? That's what made sense. But the house didn't feel like something that followed logic. It felt like something that watched. He forced himself to get up and walk toward the bathroom. Each step upstairs felt heavier than before. The hallway seemed longer. The shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, even though the sun was out. The bathroom door creaked open slowly. Inside, everything looked normal. Sink, mirror, faded tiles. Nothing unusual. Daniel stepped in and turned on the tap. Water ran, steady and clear. He leaned forward, splashing his face, trying to shake off the unease. For a few seconds, everything felt fine. Then he looked up, at the mirror. At first, nothing seemed wrong. His reflection stared back at him, tired eyes, pale skin, tension in his jaw. But then, something shifted. Not in the room, in the reflection. It was subtle, so subtle that his brain tried to ignore it. The reflection wasn't perfectly in sync. Daniel froze. His breathing slowed. He raised his hand slowly. In the mirror, his reflection followed, but just a fraction of a second late. "No," he whispered. He dropped his hand quickly. This time, the reflection didn't drop it immediately. It stayed raised for just a moment longer. A cold wave ran through his entire body. Daniel stepped back, but the reflection didn't. It stood there, still, watching him. And then it smiled. Not a normal smile, not human, too wide, too still, like something trying to imitate a smile without understanding it. Daniel stumbled backward, hitting the wall behind him. The real bathroom was silent, but inside the mirror, something was wrong. Very wrong. The reflection leaned closer, its movement slow, unnatural, almost curious, like it was studying him. Then suddenly, it turned its head, not toward Daniel, but toward something behind him. Daniel's heart stopped. He was alone in the bathroom. He knew that. He was sure of it. But the reflection was looking at something else. Very slowly, Daniel turned around. Nothing. Empty space. He turned back to the mirror. The reflection was gone. Not moved, not changed. Gone. The mirror showed an empty bathroom. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He stepped closer. His hands trembled. Then suddenly, his reflection snapped back into place, standing exactly where it should be. But now, it wasn't copying him anymore. It was already looking at him before he even moved. Daniel screamed and ran out of the bathroom. The door slammed behind him, but not by his hand. He stood in the hallway, gasping for air. His mind raced. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't stress. This wasn't normal. And then, from the end of the hallway, came a sound. Knock, knock, knock. This time, it wasn't from the walls. It was coming from the locked door. Slow, deliberate, patient. He stared at it. The dark wood, the edges that looked burned. The handle moved just slightly. And then, the knocking stopped. Silence returned. But now it felt different. Heavier. Closer. Daniel didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink, because deep down, he understood something now. The sounds in the house weren't random. They were responses. Something inside the house knew he was there, and it had just noticed him. By evening, the house had changed. Not in a way that could be seen easily, but in a way that could be felt. In Salem, the outside world continued as normal. Cars passed in the distance. The sky dimmed into shades of orange and gray. But inside the house on Maple Street, time felt trapped. Daniel hadn't gone downstairs since the incident in the bathroom. He stayed in his room, sitting in the corner, his back pressed against the wall, as far away from the hallway as possible. From the locked door. The silence was no longer empty. It was listening. Every small sound felt amplified. The faint creak of wood, the distant settling of the structure. Even his own breathing sounded too loud. He checked his phone. No signal, no internet. The battery had dropped from 70% to 12% in just a few hours. "That's not possible," he whispered. But nothing about this house followed rules anymore. Then, knock. Daniel froze. His eyes slowly shifted toward the door of his room. Knock. Knock. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was careful, almost polite, like something asking to be let in. Daniel didn't move, didn't respond, didn't breathe. Knock. 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 This time, it came from inside the room. His heart slammed against his chest. Very slowly, he turned his head. The sound was coming from the wall, right beside him. "No," he whispered. The knocking continued, steady, controlled, intentional. Knock. 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 The wall moved, just slightly, like something pressing from the other side. Daniel scrambled backward, his hands shaking as he pushed himself across the floor. His eyes locked onto the spot. The paint began to crack, thin lines spreading outward. And then a bulge formed from inside the wall, as if something was trying to push through. Daniel let out a broken gasp. "This isn't real. This isn't real." The bulge shifted, moved, slowly sliding across the wall, following him. Wherever he moved, it moved too, like it could sense him. Then suddenly, it stopped, right where his head had been seconds ago. The wall went still again, flat, silent, as if nothing had happened. Daniel stayed frozen, unable to process what he had just seen. And then, from the hallway, came a new sound. Click. The locked door. Daniel's eyes widened. For the first time since he arrived, the door was unlocking. The sound echoed through the hallway, slow, deliberate. Click. Creak. The door began to open. A thin line of darkness appeared between the frame. But it wasn't normal darkness. It looked deeper, heavier. Like it wasn't just the absence of light, but the presence of something else. The temperature dropped instantly. The air turned sharp and cold. He could see his breath now. From inside the room, something shifted. Not a shape, not a figure, just movement, like shadows moving without light. The door opened wider. And then, the knocking started again. But this time, it wasn't on the walls. It was coming from inside that room. Fast, aggressive. Bang, bang, bang. Daniel covered his ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't just outside. It felt like it was inside his head. Then suddenly, everything stopped. Complete silence. And in that silence, a thought appeared in Daniel's mind. Not his own, clear, cold, unfamiliar. You opened it. Daniel's body went completely still. He hadn't touched the door. He hadn't gone near it. But something believed that he had. Slowly, very slowly, he turned his head toward the hallway. The door at the end was now fully open, and the darkness inside it was staring back. Night had fully taken over Salem, but inside the house on Maple Street, it felt like night had never left. Daniel couldn't move. His body felt locked in place, as if the air itself had thickened around him. The door at the end of the hallway stood wide open now, and the darkness inside it was no longer still. It moved. Not like a person, not like an animal, like something that didn't belong in the physical world. The shadows inside the room twisted slowly, folding into themselves, stretching unnaturally along the walls. Daniel's breathing became shallow. Every instinct in his body screamed one thing: don't look at it. But he couldn't stop. The temperature dropped further, so cold now that his fingers felt numb. His breath came out in thin white clouds. Then something stepped forward, not fully, not completely visible, just enough to be seen. A shape, tall, too tall. Its form flickered between solid and shadow, like it couldn't decide what it was supposed to be. Daniel's mind struggled to understand it, to make sense of it, but it couldn't, because whatever that thing was, it didn't follow human rules. The hallway lights above him flickered violently, on, off, and with every flicker, the thing got closer. Not walking, not running, just appearing nearer. Daniel tried to step back, but his legs didn't respond. It felt like something behind him was holding him in place. Then he felt it, a pressure right behind his head, like something was standing directly behind him now, breathing, cold, slow. His eyes widened. The thing in the hallway was still there, still coming closer. So what was behind him? His body trembled. Very slowly, he turned his eyes, not his head, just his eyes, toward the wall beside him. And that's when he saw it. A face. Not fully formed, not human, pressed into the wall, from the inside. Its features pushed against the surface like something trapped beneath skin. Eyes sunken, empty, a mouth stretched unnaturally wide, but no sound came out. The wall pulsed slightly, like it was alive. Daniel let out a broken whisper, and the face turned toward him, even though it was part of the wall. Its eyes locked onto his, and then it smiled. The same unnatural, wide smile he had seen in the mirror. The same thing, or maybe one of many. Suddenly, the wall cracked, a loud, sharp sound. Lines spread across it rapidly, and from within, something pushed outward. A hand, pale, long, twisted. It forced its way out of the wall, fingers stretching unnaturally as they reached toward him. Daniel screamed. His body finally broke free. He stumbled forward, collapsing onto the floor as he scrambled away. Behind him, more cracks appeared, more shapes pressed against the walls, more hands, dozens of them, all trying to reach out, all trying to get to him. The hallway filled with the sound of scraping, knocking, breathing, and then, from the open room, came that voice again. Not spoken, not heard, felt. You stayed. Daniel's vision blurred. His mind began to slip. This wasn't just a house, it was something else, something alive, something that didn't just haunt, it kept. And now, it didn't want him to leave. The lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed everything. But in that darkness, Daniel could still see them. Dozens of faces, watching, smiling, waiting. The darkness didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full. Inside the house on Maple Street in Salem, Daniel could no longer tell if his eyes were open or closed. It didn't matter. He could still see them. Faces, dozens of them, pressed into the darkness like they were part of it. Some looked old, some looked young, some looked wrong. All of them were watching him. His breathing was uneven now, his thoughts slipping. This wasn't fear anymore. This was something deeper, understanding. The house wasn't haunted, it was feeding. A sudden sound broke through the silence. Drip, drip. Daniel blinked. A faint light appeared, not from above, not from any bulb, from the open room. The door at the end of the hallway still stood wide open, but now there was something else, a dim glow. Daniel forced himself to move. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the floor itself resisted him. But something pulled him forward. Not physically, mentally. The closer he got to the door, the quieter everything became. The faces faded, the whispers stopped, until there was nothing, just him and the room. He stepped inside. The air changed instantly, warmer but not comforting, suffocating. The room was empty. No furniture, no windows, just walls. But these walls were different. They weren't cracked, they weren't old, they were smooth, too smooth, like something had sealed them. Daniel reached out and touched one. It wasn't wood, it wasn't concrete, it felt soft. He pulled his hand back instantly. A low sound filled the room, not loud but deep, like something breathing. Then the walls moved, not visibly at first, but subtly, closing in. Daniel stepped back, his heart pounded violently. "No," he whispered. The walls continued shifting, slowly, quietly, like they had done this before. Then images began to appear, not on the surface, inside the walls, like memories trapped beneath them. Daniel stared, unable to look away. A family, a man, a woman, a child, standing in this same room, their faces terrified, their hands pressed against the walls, just like the faces he had seen before. They were trying to get out. The walls moved closer. The child screamed, but no sound came out. The man pounded on the surface. Knock, knock, knock. The same sound, the same pattern. Daniel staggered backward. This already happened. The images shifted. More people, different times, different faces, all trapped, all becoming part of the house. And then the truth hit him. The knocking was never coming from outside. It was coming from them, the ones inside, trying to escape. Daniel turned toward the door. It was gone. Only wall, smooth, sealed. His breath stopped. No, 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 no. The walls moved faster now, closing in. The air grew thinner, harder to breathe. He pounded on the surface. Bang, bang, bang. Just like the others. Help! But no sound came out. His voice was gone. The walls were inches away now, and then he saw them again. The faces, closer, watching him, waiting, welcoming. One of them moved forward, a familiar face, his own. Daniel froze. The face smiled, that same unnatural smile. And then everything went dark. 3 days later, the house stood silent again, unchanged, waiting. A new car stopped outside. A young man stepped out holding his phone, looking at the listing. Cheap rent, great location. He walked toward the porch. Inside the house, the air felt heavy again, and from deep within the walls, knock, knock, knock. Something was still inside, something new, something that used to be Daniel. Some houses aren't haunted, they're hungry.